Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Watch. Today I want to talk about a little film called Solomon Kane, image which you will see here. Um, Solomon Kane is based on the stories written by Robert E. Howard, and if that name sounds familiar to you, it should, because Robert E. Howard, if I can speak today, is also responsible for writing the Conan the Barbarian stories, or originating the character. I'm not sure how much of the actual novels were based on his and what were collected from the short stories he wrote for pulp magazines. Anywho, it's a lot of his characters are very similar, adventurous men type of thing. Solomon Kane is in the start of this film. He's a pirate, a vicious pirate. I also really need to mention that this does not really follow any of the books. So if you're familiar with the books, the character has the same name. He is a somewhat similar character, but not too closely related. So in the start of the film, he's a pirate. He and his crew are assaulting a fortress. When they succeed and get inside, before they can loot it, most of his crew is killed by demons, and he is confronted by another demon saying that Solomon Kane is sentenced to hell as payment for his sins. Solomon Kane, rejecting this, jumps out a window and escapes. We next find him a year later. He has renounced violence. He has given all his money to charity, and he is living, a very simple, passive life. He is then accosted by robbers on the roadside and beaten and left for dead. He is then rescued and nursed back to health by a traveling Puritan family, who were then also attacked and killed, except the daughter, who is kidnapped. Solomon Kane then basically swears off his passivity and swears vengeance to find these men and rescue this woman. That aspect of it is very much a part of Solomon Kane's character in the books. He is seen as an avenging angel in a lot of the books. He is, a man of adventure, going to great lengths to right any wrongs, to hunt down the forces of darkness. This film was intended to be like an origin story of how Solomon Kane got that way. It was intended to be a trilogy, but only this movie was ever made. This movie came out in 2009, so the fact that it's been 15 years, if I can do the maths, 15 years since this came out and no sequel has yet been made, it's probably not going to be a trilogy by now. But Solomon Kane fights the forces of darkness and, saves the day. So, spoilers. But then again, what are you going to expect? It's a Robert E. Howard story. All of his characters work that way. Conan, Kull, Solomon Kane. There are others. I was doing some research on this. He was a prolific writer. He wrote dozens and dozens of stories. He had multiple characters, not just the three that I've named. There's more than he wrote Westerns. He wrote barbarian sword and sorcery fantasies. He wrote, this takes place in the 1600s. He wrote, Tudor era adventure, pirate adventures. So, all of his characters are pretty, it's all very, very similar, just different names, faces, and eras in his storytelling. This film is also fully grade B material. This is schlock. It really, really is. That doesn't mean it's not fun. It's definitely, I enjoyed it. But I also grew up on, cheesy black and white monster movies from the 1950s. I'm kind of in that stew, so to speak. I've got nothing against campy, schlocky movies. I love them. And I feel I'm going to commit a blasphemy here. As far as quality of the writing and everything else goes, this is about as good as the Conan the Barbarian movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I don't mean to knock Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was his third film, I think. And his only film with a decent speaking role. He was still new to acting. He was still new to the English language. It's not his best work. And honestly, you know, it's kind of trashy. I still like it. You know, I'm with all of my high school friends, and we loved Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger. But there was also very few and far between of those movies that were being made, and most of the movies that were made were of that quality. Beastmaster, Krull, Conan the Barbarian, He-Man, a Master of the Universe, all the sword and sorcery movies that were made in the 80s and stuff like that, they were all very schlocky, very B-grade material. I think the reason that this didn't do as well, in spite of it being about the same quality as Conan the Barbarian, is that we've come to expect more of our films. You know, I mean, Conan and those movies of that era kind of got away with it because it was all we had. There wasn't a lot of variety out there. There wasn't a lot of quality out there. You got what you got, and you had to deal with it. And for its time, you know, it was okay. You know, we weren't looking for Shakespeare. We weren't looking for Lord of the Rings. We were just looking for something that was fun and easy to watch. And this falls in that category. It's, like I said, it's probably about as well written and acted and directed as the Conan the Barbarian films. The special effects are definitely much better. Although being 15 years old, I think the CGI is showing its age. But this is just a fun, campy sword and sorcery film. There is some sorcery in it, but it's more, you know, there's not that much of it. But sorceries, you know, cost money in special effects budgets. So you do kind of expect them to keep it to a minimum. Not everyone can throw money around like Steven Spielberg does. And given what I've said about it, in some ways I'm surprised this didn't do better. Like I said, it's about as good as as Schwarzenegger's Conan movies. But on the flip side, I've also said we expect better of our films these days. You know, it didn't do anything new except the special effects and the cinematography was a bit better. So, you know, you've got to do more than just show up these days to get that kind of a reaction, to make that kind of an iconic film. So definitely a B grade, but also if you're into this kind of stuff, it's a fun watch. And given what, you know, other movies people watch incessantly and say are great films, it should do better. It should have done better, considering the stuff that people are clamoring to watch. Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but I won't. As always, thanks for watching. As always, if you like this crap, there's other crap. And until next time, good hunting.